Welcome, everybody. I'm Sam Albrecht. I'm the director of the Office of Regulatory Oversight. I'm here to talk about the administrative rules that have went into place on the 1st of July for the Building Codes and Standards section. And specifically, this webinar Zoom call is focused on the third-party agencies that are play such a huge role in allowing us to complete our mission of safe factory built structures coming into the state or built in the state of Colorado. So with that said, I'm going to jump into a PowerPoint. I'm going to go through a few slides on that. And then we can have an open discussion on third-party agency questions. So let me share my screen. That's not the screen I want to share. Okay, can you guys see that screen? Okay, great.
Yes, I can see it.
Fantastic. Donnie's my co-host on this, and Amelia Spinner is also a co-host. They're going to help me manage the meeting a little bit. Amelia's going to let people in as they pop in. Donnie's going to help answer questions, and then he'll lead the discussion at the end with what we're seeing, specific third-party agency discussion section. All right, did that slide advance okay? Okay,
Yes, sir.
good. So again, we're going to talk, I'll have a couple ground rules, so we'll talk just a little bit about the overall building codes and standards structure, and then we will go into the approved building codes, the new administrative rules, and then wrap up and have that discussion. This is a modification of the slide deck that we used for the manufacturers last week. I've changed a few of the slides, so it's not exactly the same, but I've left some of the core slides but that I wanted to go over with them, and I also want to go over with the third-party agencies. There's a couple ground rules on this, and that is one, we're going to be recording and we'll post to the website. The second is that we cannot change statute. So if we get into discussion about, hey, I don't like this rule, if that rule is based on statute, we can't change that. And I'll cut that discussion off fairly early. I will caveat that with is that we sometimes get asked by legislators on what would make the program better. And then I can certainly make notes on those, or you can send me notes on what you think should be changed, and I can pass those along. We cannot change the approved rules at this point in time. The only way to do that is with emergency rules. If you feel that something is absolutely terrible, then we can have that discussion on that. And we're only addressing Colorado law and Colorado rules. What other folks are doing in other states is not the topic to be discussed here today. Want to talk very briefly about the controlling statute. That's Colorado Revised Statute 2432-3301 through 2432-3329. It's also the tiny home bill, which drove the administrative rule change. That is HB 22-1242. But that tiny home bill did a lot more than just add tiny homes. When I first walked into the administrative rulemaking, I thought I would just have to put "and tiny homes" every place, but no, it added a lot more information. I encourage you to go to our website, the Building Codes and Standards website, and look at the new administrative rules. It's 8 CCR 1302-14, effective 6/30 of 23. There's the new administrative rules, and then right below that, there is a bullet that says red line version of the rules. I actually printed out a copy of the red line rules. I took a snip of the very first piece of this. If you want to see what changed from the old rules to the new rules, this is the document that you should download and save. I'm going to keep it up for another month or two, and then I'll take that down once we get through all the different stakeholder meetings and folks have had a chance to look at it, because at that point in time, you guys should have implemented all the new rules. But this is a good reference document. I hope you find it useful. Building codes and standards, we do on a functional type of basis. And I will add this PowerPoint also to the as a separate bullet on the website. But you know, we break it down into three main functional areas: plan reviews, inspections, and then of course the administrative side of that. The bullets or the boxes at the bottom are just different functional areas that we deal with. Plan review, as you know, we take we check those for compliance with the building codes, compliance with the local conditions, and I'll talk more about that later. And then we're also do audits on those plans. We are also starting to do design and inspection for foundations in areas of the state that do not have a building department. That was one of those little gifts that came through HB 221242. We have either 14 or 17 counties in the state. We've listed them on the website now that do not have a building department. We are pushing the responsibility to the sellers to let the homeowners know that if they are doing their own foundation work, they have to come to us to have that design approved, and then we have to have it inspected. So that's a new thing. Inspections, you guys are all familiar with those. We do the factory inspections. You guys do a lot of the factory inspections, especially for the out-of-state factories. Installation inspections, the final certified unit inspection, compliance with the building codes, complaint inspections. We do complaint investigations and responses. And now, as I just mentioned before, we do foundation inspections. We only have 3 FTEs, 3 full-time folks that run around the state that do all these inspections for us. We have 3 more authorized. Over on the plan review side, we have 1 FTE and 2 part-time folks. We have 4 more FTEs authorized. I think as we hire those FTEs or those full-time people, the part-time folks will go away. Although I may keep that option to flex in case we need to do more plan reviews than we are expecting. I know you guys know that we were had quite a bit of backlog of plan reviews in the past. We're over that now. We're doing plan reviews in the 5 to 10 day time frame, and then that's the first review. If there's revisions, then they get kicked back, and then that's back up on the manufacturer and the third-party agencies to submit new plans to us or corrected plans to us. The administration side of the shop, this is the registration. As you know, we register manufacturers, installers, sellers, and inspectors. We also do all the processing of the construction drawings, inspection requests, financial sureties, the insignias, etc. This is also where all the fees are paid, and this is also who handles all the complaints. I'm going to pause and take a breath here. If you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll try to get to them as quickly as can. We do have time at the end. I also want to, I introduced a couple of my staff, but I want to make sure we introduce everybody. I see Yesenia on the call. Many of you have dealt with Yesenia in the past. She is doing the installation program now and also the foundation work. And Donnie, Amelia, do we have any other staff online?
Yeah, Christina and Debbie are online as well.
All right, great. Christina Wilkes is doing the tiny home program, and Deborah Kosman is doing the factory built and factory built non-residential program. So we've got the entire administrative team here today. So those are the folks that will really take care of you. Any questions so far? I have 1 hour for this presentation. That's why I'm trying to walk through these slides so we can have a good, robust discussion at the end.
I do have a question. If
Okay, Michael?
like Tom Cotier, so this foundation, you're doing reviews of those now. Is the manufacturer responsible for submitting an actual foundation design when they're in a district that doesn't have a building code? Like, do we have to worry about that? Or is that something that's done outside of the modular manufacturers, I guess, area?
So Michael, it's all going to depend on, you know, for tiny homes or modulars, it might, and the manufacturer is selling direct to the consumer, they may be responsible for selling the entire package that includes the foundation. In most cases, I would say no. In most cases, the foundation is the responsibility. And this, again, is this just in areas of the state that do not have a building department. The foundation generally is done by the registered seller who's selling the unit to the consumer as a complete package. You know, they may have a 2-car garage, they may have the foundation, they may pull the building permits, they may have their own construction company. So the seller is, it may be the seller's responsibility to submit that to us. The homeowner in some areas have done their own foundations in the past once they get the specs from the manufacturer on what's required. And then the homeowner will have to come up with us, and that design has to be approved by a registered design professional. It will be either a Colorado licensed architect or a Colorado licensed engineer.
Okay, I got it. Just as long as we don't have to enforce it with our clients saying, oh no, it's in this county, you need to have a foundation design. We'll wait to submit one to us, we can go that route, but my understanding that we don't have to force them to do or, you know, deviate them or anything like that on there. So, okay.
All right. Good question. So just as a, you know, during administrative rule updates, there's often lots of changes with respect to building codes that are being enforced. We did not change any of the base codes. We're still on IBC and IRC 2018 as amended. All the other ones are 2018 as amended, except for the energy code, energy conservation code. We're on IECC 2015 as amended. So there's no changes to the base codes, although we have tweaked some of the as amended pieces. So it should be, I will highly encourage you to go look at, and I'll talk about some of the key ones in just a second. Of course, HUD has their own building codes. We don't amend those or enforce those. We don't have any HUD code, HUD manufacturers in the state. All that product is coming from out of state. Of course, we have Rule 215 that allows modification to the building codes if necessary. This slide is very important for our third-party agency partners here, and that's that local design standards. Every plan set requires an address, and you need to make sure if you're doing plan reviews for your manufacturers that it meets the geographic and climatic conditions and the fire safety components that for that local address. That's the wind load, the snow load, and the winter design temps or design temps. That hasn't changed. Under fire safety. Fire suppression is required in some local jurisdictions, so make sure you have that requirement in there and design in there if you're doing plans for manufacturers. And then new is to wildfire risk. Wildfire risk is effective July 1. If the local jurisdiction has adopted a WUI code, a Wildland Urban Interface code, or something similar that affects the building materials of the structures going into that local jurisdiction, then that needs to be stated also on the plan set. Okay, so our administrative rules are broken down into 7 rules: definitions, codes and standards, fees, manufacturers, installers, sellers, and enforcement. I'm going to run through some of these that for third-party agencies, I think the rule 4 is the most significant, and we'll spend a little time on that one. We have changed a few definitions in Rule 1. AC, the old alternative construction, has been replaced with OC, on-site construction. We also updated the definition a little bit from the old AC definition, so be sure and you take a look at that. Permanent foundation definition has been updated, as well as the temporary foundation update. And then remote inspections are now allowed, and we are working and on finalizing the procedures for that. So we hope to get that out within the next week or two, so we can have some discussion on that. But we are going to allow remote inspections. We're just not quite sure the process and procedures right now for that. And we're happy to have that discussion at the end. But again, we're close to getting something out, so we may have to just defer a lot of discussion on that. And then we also, if you saw what I put on this previous slide with respect to the IRC, we amended Appendix Q in 2018. IRC significantly. We basically took all the language from the 2021 Appendix AQ and carried that backwards, if you want to think of it that way, into the 2018 IRC Appendix Q as amended. That's also where we make a distinction between tiny house and tiny home. The tiny home is very specifically defined in statute. It's on a vehicle chassis, less than 400 square feet, built for long-term occupancy, and can go on a temporary or permanent foundation. The tiny house is the standard 400 square foot. We consider most tiny houses to be modular and going on a permanent foundation. So if you're building tiny homes, make sure you have that distinction of whether it's modular or on a vehicle chassis. And then, of course, what we're actually recommending for the tiny home industry on this is to provide a installation handbook for their units that covers 3 different setups. The RV setups, if they want to use it that way, a permanent foundation setup, and then a temporary foundation setup. So, because we expect these things to move around some. We also added the definition for a vehicle chassis, again, specifically geared toward tiny homes. They have to have a GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating, and they have to have a VIN number. We also ask for those to be built for purpose. If you're doing plan reviews for a tiny home company and they are not using a built for purpose trailer, then we will need drawings on the trailer, or I'm sorry, on the vehicle chassis. And then I've already mentioned 1.33 on the wildfire risk. Again, we're limiting that to the materials on the home itself, not the turnarounds or brush clearing or any of that, because that's outside of our scope. We did not change the third-party agency definition other than some grammatical changes and adding tiny homes. Yes, a tiny home is a dwelling, and a tiny house is not equal to an RV. A tiny house is a modular 400 square foot IRC dwelling per our definition. So administrative rules, 2, these are the codes and standards, as I mentioned. We had give from June 30th to July 1. I'm not going to be real picky on which of those 2 days it is. Manufacturers have 180 days to comply with those changes. Extensions can be requested in writing. In Rule 2.1, which is the IBC, and we updated some ice barrier language. In 2.2, the IRC, I've already mentioned wildfire risk and foundations, were added to table 2.2.1. In Rule 2.2.1, table R 301.21. In the also in the IRC in 2.2.13, we added some information regarding the interconnection of smoke alarms. And then, as I mentioned, 2.2 Appendix Q, extensive modifications, bringing in over the AQ language. No changes to IMC or IPC. Here's the other one that we've got as of effective August 1st. The state adopted the new NEC. We will get out wording on that. We had amended the old NEC a little bit. We're in the process of working internally on if we have to do a emergency rule change, or if we can just change and reference it by note. But we are on the updated NEC. No change to fuel gas, no change, and we changed a tiny piece of the IECC regarding the air barrier checklist requirements. We actually had a lot of discussions at the Technical Advisory Committee, which is the group of 15 that we pull together to help us do the administrative rule changes. And then, so we did make some changes there. That air barrier checklist, be sure and check that out. That's going to be important for the guys doing the plans. Of course, no change to federal standards. And then Division of Housing Installation Standards, we added tiny homes into that. And then 2.14 alternate standards, we added tiny homes there.
Hey, Sam, I just want to add for the NEC, one of the changes that we didn't make for the NEC is that the high pot test is no longer required for modular IRC structures. Anything that's commercial still requires a test, and then the tiny homes would require the test as well, because they are in the chassis and mobile.
Okay, good. Thanks, Donnie. In fees, we didn't increase any of the fees, but we added a couple new ones. We added a 3-year registration fee for manufacturers. We added a late registration fee, and we added a second revision plan check fee of $100. So if you send in, if the manufacturer sends in a plan set, we send it back with comments. It comes back without it incorporating our comments. We have to send it back for the second time. There's an extra $100 fee for that. We also added a multifamily inspection fee, and then we modified a few other words in there. So here we get into the meat with the administrative rules. This is the Rule 4. Let me go back to this. It is, I can't overemphasize that your responsibility to read and implement all rule changes, right? And so this is a highlight summary of that. Again, the new rules have been posted since the 4th of July, I think, 5th of July. So we need to make sure that you guys have all read the complete rule changes. We've changed our focus a little bit of calling them from factories to manufacturers. Manufacturers carry a little more responsibility than the factories do. So you'll see some wording changes related to that. Rule 4.9, we changed the certified manufacturer sum, program sum. We talk about in 412 the removal of certified status. This is all things that directly are going to relate to third-party agencies that are doing the inspections out there. And then we added some additions to explain the DOH plan review process in 415. 417.3, I've already talked about the local wildfire risk. And then 17.4, we clarified the plans for a specific address. We added a section 4.17.5 on multifamily plans. If you have a big multifamily, if your manufacturers have a big multifamily project, we want to sit down and kind of talk about that. There's going to be some additional requirements that are tied to that so that we can do on-site inspections for that multifamily project. And that's going to have to come across with the plan set. We're also looking at changes to the expirations of plans. We talked to that in 4.24. And then the details for tiny home plans. And then 4.33, we added the involvement of third-party agencies in that certified manufacturer status. Third-party agencies can now recommend the manufacturer to go to a certified status. And so you may hear that from your manufacturers, hey, can I be certified? Can you write me a recommendation letter? We're still finalizing that piece too. I've actually got time set on my calendar later today to try to knock that out. But we are hoping to see more certified manufacturers come in. That's something they've asked for in a while, but the third-party agencies are going to be involved in that process. Rule 5 is pretty much on the sellers. Manufacturers also have to be registered sellers if they're selling direct to the consumer. Bonds, letters, credits, or CDs have to be made out to the Division of Housing. And then here's where I also mentioned 512 new requirements for sellers to notify buyers in areas of the state without a building department that they must get the foundation design approved and inspected by DOH. When I do this stakeholder meeting for the installers, and we've already done a couple of state installer training seminars, that if they get out there and there is not a stamp design and approved foundation inspection, they should not install that unit. So if you got so the manufacturers that are contracting for installation know this also. The sellers are going to know it, and the installers know it. We don't want to see anything going on a foundation that hasn't been approved and inspected by DOH. Rule 6 installers, we added tiny homes. We talked about installation areas without a building department. All manufactured homes, tiny homes, and multifamily must have an installation insignia. And then we talked to our installers also have to have a bond or letter of credit or CD, and we talk about that there. Rule 7 only had some minor changes, new text on summary suspension, and some other grammatical changes. And then these are our resource pages. Basically, you can go to the website and go to the Division of Housing and go down to Building Codes and Standards. And that's where you find the administrative rules. Statute, again, you've got the reference for that. And then this is contact information for Donnie, Christina, and Deborah. These are your primary points of contact. And then we're going into questions and discussion. All right. I know I rocked through those, guys. If you guys want to go back to any of the slides, we can, and we can go into those changes in more detail. But I'm going to open it up for discussion. And Sean, you had one in the chat. Is the intent that the factory certification, if authorized, will expire annually as it was set up in the past? Is this an issue that would need to be worked out? With the 3-year registration, we require, so every certified manufacturer is also a registered manufacturer, right? So they have to follow those same rules as a registered manufacturer with respect to if they decide on a 3-year registration, they have to send us an update letter every year saying that nothing's changed or what has changed. And then their certified manufacturer status will also continue at that point.
Sam, I had a question regarding. Oh, was that me?
I think it was you, but I think you're okay now.
We have some tiny house manufacturers that are building tiny houses to the ANSI 119.5 or the NFPA 1192. Can you just, I know the answer, but can you just kind of clarify that those builders can continue to build to that standard and place them in places that RVs can go?
Absolutely, Robin. And so that's a really good point. If a tiny home manufacturer is building what the state classifies as an RV, right, they can continue doing that. We're not requiring them to change everything over to IRC. We've put up FAQs on our website for consumers, manufacturers, and local jurisdictions on where on tiny homes. There's an FAQ for everyone. And so what we're trying to do is educate the consumer and the local jurisdiction, right? That if they want to buy a tiny home and put it someplace that requires a certificate of occupancy for long-term occupancy and the definition of a dwelling, it needs to go through our program and get our state insignia. But manufacturers can continue to build RVs. The only requirement of the state is that manufacturers, that all RVs being built and offered for sale have to have an RVIA sticker or some other sticker designating it as an RV. So question, Robin, does that answer your question?
Yes, that's very clear. The
Okay,
difference between an RV and a dwelling. Dwellings go to places where you can get a CO, and RVs go to places where RVs can go.
Now, the only other twist to that, my other program is the Mobile Home Park Oversight Program. If we start seeing RV tiny homes go into a mobile home park and get either a permanent or temporary foundation hookup there, then they will be classified as mobile homes as part of that mobile home park, right? So if you are going to develop a tiny home village and you own the land and you allow people to come in and live in these things year round in a tiny home village, that might be classified as a mobile home park if there's 5 or more. So I can answer people's questions on that. There's another question in the chat regarding third-party agencies, registered satellite office. Donnie, I'm not sure on that one. Do you know?
It's just the main office. So the main business location. So the only place that's required to register the satellite offices or satellite locations would be a manufacturer, because each manufacturer is registered separately.
Yeah, we consider each factory to be a separate location and they do have to register those. But, and this, I thought that I knew the answer to that and I was right. Yeah, the third party agencies just need the corporate office.
That's what that was. Donnie, this is
Yeah.
PFS. Is that a change? Because in the past, it used to be all the satellite offices had to be registered as well.
I don't think it's changed. Like I said, there's nothing that requires that I know of in the rules. I say that the individual locations have to be registered. So I think what you're probably talking about is like, let's say for instance, NTA, they have multiple locations. They send one application, but they put the different locations on there. And then we just put an account separate for each location.
Okay, so do you have to pay a fee for each one of those separate locations?
It shouldn't be a separate location fee that I know of. It's just like I said, you submit one application with the different locations that are on there. So if you have one main business, but you have the different satellite locations, each location is mentioned on the application, and then it's submitted as a package, and then we just create individual accounts for each one of them.
Okay.
So like if we have an issue with one, well, let's say one of your satellite offices, right? We'd contact them instead of the main office.
Okay. Because we just renewed this I think it was this past year.
Uh-huh.
And we got charged for all the satellite offices as well.
Okay. Well, I'll take a look again at the rules just to verify, but that's my understanding is that there's no specific requirement that each satellite location is required, because NTA or PFS, it's its own agency, right? It's not like
Correct.
all of them report to one location.
Yep. No, you're correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing too is,
I'm
sorry, and just real quick, the other thing too is when you report that one application, each one of those locations will have different personnel, and that's probably why they have the original setup was that each location will have its own account, is because each location will have a different inspector that operates out of there, and they have to be meet the minimum requirements that are in, I think it's 4.27, which would be a building inspector certification.
That's
So
fine.
you're submitting different resumes for each person.
Okay, thank you.
And Donnie, this is Chuck with NTA. I think we were paying for the separate inspection regions as well.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'll check into it.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Donnie, if it's just the corporate office, then then listen to other agencies, do we get a refund on those other locations?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think we can look into that and see. Like I said, let me look at the rules and then just
Okay.
verify. But like I said, to my understanding, there's no specific requirement for each location.
We'll look into it and we'll send you guys out a note on if we've done that and the appropriate rule. Let us do a little research on that. And thank you, Ian, for bringing that to our attention.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And then there was another question about building codes. We spend a lot of time with our local jurisdiction, and the way the state program works, it does not matter what building codes the local jurisdictions are on. If they are pushing you for newer codes than the 2015 IECC as amended and adopted by the state, you tell them no. If they don't like that answer, you call us. We'll call the local building department, and we do this on a regular basis. We quote chapter and verse to them, and if they tell us no, then we have their attorney talk to our attorney, and then that turns it all around. We don't mind being, because my attorney is the attorney general for the state of Colorado. We don't have it, and it never gets nasty. It's generally because they've had turnover and they don't know how the state program works. but the local jurisdictions, and it's specifically written in the state statute, that the local jurisdiction cannot supersede building requirements for the state program. And so I think with respect to 2015 IECC, that if Donnie, how's that work? If they want to go back a set of documents, they can.
Yeah, so our rules specifically allow a manufacturer to build down to the 2009 IECC as long as the local jurisdiction has specifically adopted that code. So if they adopted the 2009, 2012, it'd be okay to design the building to meet those requirements, but only if the local jurisdiction specifically adopted that IECC version.
Yep.
If not, at a minimum, 2018, you can build to a higher standard, that's fine. But at a minimum, it's 2015, sorry, not 2018.
Raul, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Oh, you bet.
Sam, while we have everybody here from the third-party agencies, I kind of want to talk about the insignias because we did get new insignias.
Oh yeah, let's do that, Donnie. Go ahead.
You want to unshare your screen so it might be easier for them to see it when I'm.
Yeah.
Let me take my blur background off. There we go. All right, so just to kind of update everybody, or maybe just a reminder to everybody of the existing insignias that we do have. So everybody's probably seen our silver insignias, which is for the IRC structures. These are going to be the same. There's no changes to these. So these only go on IRC modular homes. They don't go on any commercial structures. All right. So if you're a certified factory and you're doing inspections for a certified factory and you're placing these insignias on the structures, make sure you're filling out all the information and that the information that is assigned to that structure for insignias numbers is correct. So you got this primary insignia. So every structure at a minimum will receive a primary insignia. But if there's additional boxes, so let's say it's a 3-box unit, right? It's a 3-box dwelling. It's going to get 1 primary insignia and then 2 floor tags. So each floor tag is like this. Oh, there we go. Each floor tag is just a 2x2 little insignia. So it'll be 1 primary, 2 floor tags, and then that's what's assigned. And then our inspectors write the insignias numbers on here of the additional insignia numbers for the floor tags. Okay, so if you have 1 primary, typically you just do it in numerical order. So if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, you put the 1, 2, 3, 4 on here. If it's 1, 2, 3, 5, you put 1, 2, 3, 5 on here, and then so and so on. Okay. The other thing that you probably are used to seeing are these commercial insignias. These blue insignias, again, are the larger ones, are the primary. Every structure will receive a primary. And then one thing that we added was now we have blue floor tags. So each additional box for that unit will receive a floor tag. So again, if it's a 3-box office structure, it's going to get 1 primary insignia and then 2 additional floor tags. Okay, and then the typical location is underneath the sink. If there is no sink, you can place it on the electrical panel. If you can't place it on an electrical panel, it needs to be placed on a location that it cannot be removable, but still be accessible, right? You don't want to put it, let's say you have an office structure that has drywall for the ceiling, right? You don't want to put it above that ceiling. I've seen some factories put the insignias above the drop-down ceilings, which is probably not the most ideal location. But if you're confused, just let us know and we can talk through it. There's some places that, or some buildings that have bathrooms, right? There's not a kitchen sink, right? Because maybe there's no office kitchen or office area to put it. But there's a bathroom there. You can put it in the bathroom. I think that'd be sufficient as well. But this has to be in a location that it can't be removed. And then also must be accessible. All right. So here's another insignia that we use. This is a silver and green insignia. This is for any modification. So let's say that a factory built structure was constructed at one point in time and then certified, but then they wanted to make some modifications to it, right? It could be like floor plan changes. It could be a change of use. Actually, change in use probably we wouldn't use these. We would just update the blue insignia. But let's just say that they change one of the offices to a storage area or something like that, or any kind of floor plan change. It kept the same use. We would use these insignias. We would just add this insignia to that that structure with the original insignias that were issued to it. All right. Then we have these purple insignias. These purple insignias, it looks like it's blue, but it's not. It's purple. Let me see if I can do a side by side here. You can slightly see the difference in the color, but this one's purple. So this is a component insignia. These insignias are for components, so it's a structure, but it's a smaller portion of a larger building. So, for instance, we have factories that build bathroom groups, right? When it's put together, it's a structure, right? But it's going into at least in this situation, it went into a hospital, right? So it's a smaller component of a larger building. Okay, so those ones would receive these purple insignias. All right. Now, these are kind of typical for all our residential structures. These are our copper colored installation insignias. You shouldn't see these on structures at the factory because it hasn't been installed yet. For some reason, if you do, let us know. But these shouldn't be at the factory. These should only be at the site location with the installer if they're certified, or the Division of Housing, or a participating jurisdiction, or a registered installation inspector. Okay. And those registered installation inspectors are certified inspectors who inspect installations on our behalf. All right. The new insignias that I'm going to show you here, actually, here's one more old one. These are inspection only insignias. These are insignias that we place on structures that go out of state. We have reciprocity agreements with different states, like Washington's a big one. I think Indiana is another one. We have Nebraska. I haven't seen one from Wyoming, but typically we only place these insignias, just letting the state know that we looked at them, and that if we are authorized to place that state's insignia on the structure, they know that it came from us and it wasn't just the factory placing it on there, because sometimes they ship it to the factory, sometimes they ship it to us for us to place it on there. But we placed our little 2x2 green insignia just to let them know that, yeah, we actually looked at it and we approved it. All right. All right, so for the new ones, for tiny homes, these are the new ones. They're the color is a magenta, but we call them pink. It's more like a metallic pink color, but these go on the tiny home structure. So if we get factories that are going to start producing tiny homes, and you are a third-party agency who's inspecting on our behalf at those factories, these pink insignias they will be the insignias that will be placed on those. All right. Now, these don't get placed on tiny houses, which are the IRC permanent foundation without the chassis, right? So if it's an IRC tiny house that's going on a permanent foundation system without the chassis, they'll receive the typical silver insignia, right? Because these are all built to the IRC codes and going on permanent foundation systems. All right. When it comes to the installation of tiny homes will also still receive the copper insignia. All right. Now, with the insignia for the installation process for those, it gets a little tricky because they can be placed on temporary foundation systems or permanent foundation systems. What we decided is that when it comes to a permanent foundation installation for a tiny home, we will place these on there. If it's just temporary, the structures will keep moving around. If it's there more than 180 days, then we'll place a copper insignia on it. All right. Another new one is our black insignias. These black insignias are going to start going on multifamily structures. All right. And these are multifamily commercial structures. So like anything that's a R2, we have R2, R3, and R4s that are in our multifamily definition. These black insignias will go on those structures. And then we got floor tags as well for those. So if it's let's say it's a 52 box apartment building, but each dwelling is 3 boxes. You're going to have one primary for each dwelling, and then a floor tag for each additional box to complete that dwelling. All right. And then the newest insignia is a gold one. It almost looks like Washington's. It's a little more orange than Washington's insignia, but it has the state of Colorado on there. And these are the installation insignias that go on those multifamily structures. All right. We got about 2 minutes probably left. One thing I want to mention too for third-party agencies is there's a problem that we're running into is that I think there's some confusion on the requirements for allowing the construction of units at the factory. We sent a memo last year that allowed factories to start construction after 10 and 20 business days, depending on whether it was residential or commercial. But third-party agencies are allowing units to leave the factory without the approved set of plans. We have a case right now that there's no plan submitted for a structure. Third-party agency inspected the unit and it was shipped, and it still hasn't even gone through our program yet. So I want to make sure that third-party agencies are doing their due diligence and checking for approved set of plans prior to allowing a structure to ship. All right. We shouldn't be allowing structures to ship if it hasn't even gone through the program yet for plan review. I'm even not sure what plans you're even inspecting to if there's no approved plans at the factory location. So I want to bring that to your attention. And then also the issues that we're running into on the plan review side for agencies that are doing plan reviews for customers. The biggest things that we're finding is the geographic and climatic conditions. I think there's confusion on the jurisdiction requirements. Sometimes it's in a county, sometimes it's actually in the town or city, but they're mixing them up. And so we're having to resubmit for that to make sure that those requirements are being fulfilled correctly for our review. And then the other thing that's coming up is when a third-party agency is reviewing documents, it's a complete review. It's not like, hey, I just want you to look at the NEPs and the architecturals. You need to do a full review of the plan, right? That includes the structurals, electrical, energy, all that stuff, right? Fire, wildfire safety, everything. But the other thing is you should be stamping each document so that we know that you reviewed all those documents. So sometimes things change after the plans have been approved and then documents are swapped out and we don't know if those documents were reviewed or not. So a third-party agency should be stamping every single document that they review. All right. All right, that's all I have.
Thanks, Donnie. And we know this was pretty quick. Donnie, there's another question in the chat about does the third-party inspector affix the insignias at the time of inspection? Do you want to address that, or do you need clarification on the question?
I think I can answer it. So if you're a certified factory, right, you're only required one inspection, either by the Division of Housing or the third-party agency. All right. So if the third-party agency is, they can inspect at any time along the production line, right, for that one box, right? So if it got inspected at the floor, that's fine, right? If it got inspected when the walls got put up, that's fine. If it got inspected at the very final inspection, that's fine too, because the whole process when you're a certified factory, or if you're an inspection agency who's inspecting for a certified factory, you shouldn't be just inspecting one stage throughout the entire process. So if you're just going out there and doing floor inspections and saying, well, I haven't looked at anything else, then you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing as a third-party agency. You should be inspecting the entire process so that if there was an issue, let's say that you did an inspection at the building final part, right? The final walkthrough of that structure, and you found an issue with some electrical, right? Now you can go back in time along that production line and see if they're still making that same mistake, right? If you're doing an inspection at the floors and you find an issue there, right, you're going to correct it then and there. If you're finding an issue at the rough stage, right, you can go back in time. You should be inspecting every single part of that production line so that you know that every stage is doing things how they're supposed to be doing. And so as I said, you're only required to inspect that unit once throughout that timeline, so that because you're already inspecting every stage throughout that entire production. Right?
Ian, does
And
that
then,
answer
so
your question?
you don't have to place it, is what I'm trying to get to, is you don't have to place the insignia on the structure as long as you're checking everything else along that production line. Right?
That's
If
if
you
you're
want to make it
certified.
That's if
Well,
we're just, that's only if we're a certified manufacturer, right?
Yep, certified manufacturer, right? Because a registered factory is not allowed to place the insignias at the factory. A registered factory, when they purchase insignias, they stay with us, and then we do the oversight inspection at the site location, and we place the insignia on the structure.
So we have to look at every stage
Yep.
of production then.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, so as a certified factory, the third-party agency should be inspecting the entire process, but you're only required to inspect that one box at any point in that process.
Okay, thanks.
You
And
bet.
then
Sean,
Sean
I'm not
has-
sure I understand your question. How do you address manufacturers that only build single projects at a time? Do we never certify them? The manufacturer can be certified, but you want to unmute and tell us what your situation is?
Sean,
Yeah, sorry about that. Excuse me. I've got a problem here. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yeah, but we're still getting a little bit of an echo.
How about now?
That's better.
Excellent. So what I'm asking about is if a manufacturer only builds one building in their factory at a time, they may be able to build compliantly to their quality program and build for the plan set, but I don't have an entire production line to look at. I've only got one project to look at.
yeah, well, the process is still the same, right? If you're a registered factory, the third-party agency is only inspecting two stages of the production, and that's the roughs and the final, right? When you're a certified factory, and let's say they're only building one unit, again, your job is to make sure that the entire process is being done correctly, because you're only requiring to inspect one phase of construction. So if you had to be there to audit them for each phase of construction in order to get that confidence that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and every stage of production is going through smoothly, I would say if there's minor issues, if there's major issues, of course, red tag it, halt the production, and make sure that they're making those corrections. But if it's a minor issue and you can see at the next stage, just let them know, like, hey, I've seen this issue, it needs to be corrected. I'm gonna come back and re-inspect this before I give you the okay to ship that unit. Okay. And then as long as they're doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, I would say just coordinate with that third party, or not third party, the manufacturer, any additional inspections that you need to do. And so you gotta remember, if you look in the rules, it tells you if you find any issue and it's been red tagged and you have to halt the procedures, increased inspection schedule is needed. All right. So even if you're just starting off, if you say, like, hey, I need to see the entire production of this unit, so I know that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing at every stage, then you can set those up until you feel confident enough that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
So Donnie, to be clear, if I've got a manufacturer, they're building the very first project for the state of Colorado, I look at that building 100% through the build of that project, and I've determined that they're worthy of being certified. I recommend that certification to you, but they're still only going to build one project moving forward at a time. When I recommend certification to you and I come back in for their second build, am I going to look at that one time, or do I need to look at that a couple of different times, like a roughing and a final, or how would I handle that?
I would say inspect as much as you want, as many times as you want, until you feel confident enough to write them a recommendation letter.
Okay, bear in mind, I've already issued a recommendation. I've already said I recommend these guys for certification. They're only going to build one project at a time. But I've seen their projects, and now I'm going to recommend certification. I issue that recommendation over to you. You say, okay, we agree with you. They're certified. Tomorrow they start a brand new project. It's only going to be one project on that production line. If I see that thing in floor framing, can I tag it with a label?
No, you don't, it doesn't get tagged with label until the very final stage, right? Because the label itself signifies, are you talking about your label or are you talking about our label? Sorry.
No, I'm talking about your label.
So our label signifies the structure was built to the approved set of plans, right? So you can't place the insignia on there until it's been completed. And so I guess what I forgot to mention is that even if it's a certified factory, if that structure is not complete at the final stage, and what I mean is if there's OC items that need to be completed at the site location, you still can't place that insignia because the OC items are additional items that need to be completed at the site location to finish the compliance of the structure, right? So if there's nothing that's OC for that structure and is completed at the factory, then you can place that insignia there at the factory at the final stage, the final walkthrough. Like, hey, I walked this building, everything was done to the approved set of plans. There's no OC items to be done at the site location. That structure is compliant. All you need to do is basically it's a plug and play, right? All I need to do is attach the utilities and attach to the foundation, and it's a complete structure.
Yeah. So we've got two scenarios. We've got a building that when it's built and run through the factory, it's still going to need some work on site. That kind of a building is not going to get a label. It's going to get labeled on site by the state of Colorado. Then there's going to be another set of buildings where they're going to fabricate the thing and it's going to be complete. It's going to be turnkey. They're going to ship, they're going to join it together, and they're done. Fixed roof, set on the foundation, etc.
Yep.
When
all right, go ahead.
When I'm in that situation, if I'm looking at, let's say, a 10-station production line, and their floor happens to fall at section 1, they're just framing it up. I walk that entire production line, I evaluate the quality program, and I get to that Colorado building in floor framing, which is going to be a turnkey. I've looked at it. I can issue a label to that building at that point in time, or do I have to wait for it to come to final finish?
It has to be at the final finish because it's not meeting the compliance yet. Right?
So
it's not a complete structure.
Okay. So, and I get that. I'm okay with all that. So if the rule is we've got to see Colorado in one stage of production, if I don't see it in final, I've still got to see that a second time. Is that what I'm understanding?
Like I said, if you're inspecting every stage of construction, right, and you feel confident that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing with every stage of production, then if you inspect it at any point of that production line, and you're okay with that section, they can place it doesn't have to be you who places it. It could be the factory because they're certified, right? They just need to have one inspection done by a third-party agency or by the Division of Housing. So they can place that insignia themselves if they want to. If you're not confident that they're doing something right, then you need to go out there and you need to audit them, right? Like, hey, I need to see more of this. Or like, hey, you're only calling me for the floor production. I need to see what it looks like at the roughs. I need to see what it looks like after drywall. I need to see what it looks like after installation's been put in, right? You coordinate that with the factory so that you know that they are doing everything right because you're placing your insignia on there as well that you inspected it, right? So you have to do what you need to do to make sure that you're confident enough that that structure can leave the factory with only one inspection being required.
Gotcha. That makes sense to me. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, good. All right, there's one thing that I forgot to mention too, and that was effective January 1 of 2025. We are bumping from the 2015 IECC to the 2018 IECC. So we bump up a version effective. Is that right, Donnie? We go from 15 to 18, or we go straight to 21?
I think it's 21 as
January 1 of 25, we go to the 2021 IECC. We will do a rulemaking before that. We will also consider bumping all of our 2018 building codes to 2021. But there'll be ample time to provide input on that before we do that. But we are, you basically got 15 months to get ready for the 2021 IECC.
And I think the amended part for the 2009 is probably going to be eliminated because it's a state law that's coming out. So there shouldn't be any jurisdictions lower than the 2021. So I don't think we're going to have that anymore once that does come through.
The NECC, as soon as the state adopts it, it goes into effect. So what we have to do is go back and take a look. We amended the previous NEC. I'll send out another technical alert notice on the new NEC implementation, but it is on the state website if you want to take a look at it. Donnie, we probably need to get that out pretty quick.
Yeah, the other thing too, for everybody, when we say the state, when the state adopts it, it's DORA, the Department of Regulatory Agencies. So when they adopt, when their state electrical board adopts a new code, we have written in our statute, the DOLA statute, to align with their adoption, just so there's not any incompatibility between the electrical codes. I'm not sure of anything with the, I know the state plumbing board has a new Colorado plumbing code, but our rules do not specify that we're going to adopt anything that they adopt. We stick with our plumbing code.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, Donnie, Sean has another question about res check.
Yeah.
Com check.
Are accepted the com check. Yeah, I think that's a good inspection tool. If you use, so the question is using the com check or res check inspection form. I think that's a good tool to be using when you're doing your inspections. I think having that as part of the procedures for the factory helps them produce a better structure, right, when it comes to energy code compliance. The other thing too is when we were talking about earlier with the air barrier checklist, right? That is required to be done throughout the entire process. So that checklist, if you look at the IECC table, I forget what it is, R402 or something like that. If you look at that table, it gives you a general rundown of what's required. But if you can find a better tool to use that better breaks down that table, definitely use it, right? But at a minimum, you have to follow that table. So whatever is required to meet those requirements in that table, you should be doing. But if you could find a better table that breaks that down even further, then I would use that as your inspection tool as well, right? The ultimate goal is just to make sure that the structure is leaning in that factory, meaning the minimum code requirements as approved on the plans, right? So when you're placing that label, you're saying like, hey, I inspected this unit and it's been inspected, it meets the IRC, and to my knowledge, there's nothing that is deficient about this building. Okay. And then the other one from Robbins, tiny homes can use R30 in the ceiling by using the IRC exception. So I believe it's is it R38?
I think that's what it is, Donnie, for the.
I thought it was R38 because in the energy code it says R49 for the attic space, but when it's less than 500 square feet, it allows you to reduce it to, I believe it's R38.
Yeah, Robin, we'll check on that for you.
Yeah. All right. I know that Sean had some questions about remote RVIs, remote video inspections.
Yeah.
Oh, Sean.
Donnie, I think you guys kind of talked about it a little bit. It sounds like you're going to allow them, but we're not sure what that's going to look like.
Yeah, and I know we're over time. I kind of wanted to talk about that real quick. Is that okay, Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the RVIs, we've been talking a lot about it. We talked to Robin because that's how NOAA operates, right? They're all remote video inspections, right? But the process itself, we don't have a process in place, right? we have some recommendations on how to do it. Robin has his operation that he sent me. I've seen some from ICC on how they recommend doing RVIs. But the two biggest things that we're trying to get situated right now is the connection, right? So the recommendations from ICC is 4G connection. But the problem is, just because you have 4G connection doesn't mean you have the download capacity in certain locations around that factory, right? So I was looking into the minimum download speeds that are required to relay high definition 1080p video, right? And that's about 5 megabytes per second, right? So we're thinking that we're going to use that as a guideline instead of 4G, because I don't know about you, if you ever use your cell phone, I can have 5G connection and still not get good reception, right? So just because you have that capacity doesn't mean that you have good download speeds. So I think we're looking into 5 megabytes per second as a minimum rating for your Wi-Fi connection or your internet connection for relaying the videos, right? We walked factories that use Wi-Fi in the factory for their tablets for the production line. And they're like, yeah, we get good connection up front, but when we get toward the back, there's not good connection out there. So we have to walk back toward the front until we get good connection, right? And they have Wi-Fi signal, and I'm sure the Wi-Fi signal there is probably more than the 5 megabytes, right? So you should be able to have at least a 5 megabyte connection at any point in that factory where you're doing inspections. Okay. The other thing is remote inspections. How are we determining that our remote inspections are working if we're not going to the site location, right? The actual factory location to verify that, hey, what we're looking at on the screen is actually being seen or can be seen at the site or at the factory location, right? So we're thinking of putting in an auditing process that at a minimum, you should be auditing a certain amount of those units to make sure that your RVI inspection process is accurate, right? I think there's some things that are coming up to mind that, like, how are we going to see this during a video inspection, like cut wires, right? How are you going to see cut wires at a receptacle using a little camera that is only 1080p, right? But being able to audit those inspections or that inspection process and verifying, like, hey, yeah, what we're seeing on camera is what we're seeing in person. We're fine, but it's just an auditing process of doing it. Doesn't mean you have to do every single unit. It's just there should be a certain amount of assurity that you are seeing both, or seeing the same situation at either at the screen or in person.
All right, so with that said, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're 21 minutes over, so I want to go ahead and end the recording. And thank you all for participating. Like I said, we'll get this up on the website as soon as we can. If you have follow-on questions for us, please, we'll stick around for a few minutes after I stop the recording. But then be sure and email us and we'll get back to you if you found this. I hope you found this useful. And we appreciate all you guys do again for the state of Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you.